Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I get to sit down with the lovely mayor of Oshawa, Dan Carter, today. Dan, what does a day in your life look like? What's today like for you?
Today's not too bad because we're not sitting right now, so it makes it a little bit better. But first thing, our day starts always very, very early. We usually do a security call or a tariff call first thing in the morning. Me with senior leadership team. This morning I met with the Muslim community about some of the challenges that they're facing across the region of Durham. Met with my team today as we're strategizing for next week. I'll be leaving to go away for a little bit, so we want to make sure we get those things done. We're preparing for AMO, and so that's a big part of the conversations. I have another meeting this afternoon in regards to our senior leadership team, but every day it's my day starts about 5:30 in the morning, and usually on an average day it's over by about 6:30, but then you have other obligations outside the office. But I'm fortunate. I've got really good people around me, and I think understanding what's expected of me and what's expected of them, and I think that helps me be able to do the job. So
I in the interview process, it's a small thing, but it tells a lot about an office, is how quickly they get back to you.
Yeah.
And I will say that your your office has the record response time for me. So
I knew we could be number one in something.
Congratulations. But it's something small, but it does show. It just shows the expectation you set, but then it also shows the expectation you set in people when you bring them on as team members here, and it definitely flows as it goes down.
We're going through a really interesting time here at this city. I'm a great believer that government has to change dramatically, and for a long period of time, government has been almost like a parent relationship with the residents, and I'm a great believer that government has to be customer centric. So everything that we do in regards to our customers internally, which is our team, and externally, which is our residents, and government bodies, has to be responses in regards to a customer-centric philosophy. And that means when we're attracting, retaining, or training, we've got to pick the right people to be able to understand that philosophy. The reality being is we're one of 444 municipalities in Ontario. People can do business anywhere across this province and across North America. So we better figure out how we're going to be different and how people see value in what we do. Yeah. And by the way, we're still going through that period of transformation right now as an organization, but I truly believe in my heart of hearts, government has to change, and it has to change in a positive way.
Well, you said it in a good way, customer service.
Yeah.
When you build it around that, it's great for the people. But hey, I want to get into something that's very unique to you, and what makes you unique in your position. Because today we're going to be speaking about the issue of homelessness, but then we're also going to be speaking about job security here in Oshawa. You have a unique story, and one thing I wanted to quote you on because it really stood out to me, and I wanted to start the interview with this was, in an interview you had said you thought you were being punished for something. Now you know you were being prepared for something great.
Yeah.
When you hear those words back to you, what's it like to reflect on that?
It really makes sense to me, and I'll tell you how I came to that kind of revolution. Let's say that it was at a very, very dark period of time in my life. I had just lost my sister in May of 2000 to suicide, and my sister was a very successful business person and seemed to be very successful in a lot of different ways. And my sister played a significant role in regards to my own recovery through addiction and mental health. And I just didn't see my sister, the struggles that she was going through. And she didn't struggle with drugs or alcohol or those kind of things. And it was a very short illness. And I was struggling myself. I was struggling about what does this all mean? And I really don't understand it. And I started reflecting upon my life and all the events that have happened in my life and all of those kind of things. And I went to my pastor and said to him, I said, I just don't understand this. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And he challenged me in regards to, over a period of time, over a couple of months, he challenged me in regards to my interpretation of who my creator was and how I interpret my own faith and my journey through faith. But he also then put a question to me that I thought was really, really amazing. He said, it doesn't matter what you believe if you have your own faith, whatever that is. He said, but if you believe that you've been created by a power greater than yourself, do you believe that power is vengeful and hateful, or do you believe that individual is light and love and kindness and compassion? And I said, well, I just can't believe that it's darkness. I just can't believe that. And so then he posed the question to me. He said, then why do you think all the events that happened in your life have happened to you? And I had to reflect back, and his question back to me was kind of, do you think you've been prepared for something, or do you think you've been punished? And I just couldn't believe that I was being punished. I drew the conclusion with his help and through time to be able to kind of say, you know what, maybe I'm being prepared for something. And that kind of gave me a sense of relief. It gave me a sense of purpose. It gave calmness to it. And especially when I lost my sister to suicide, I was struggling so much with her decision to leave. And I needed something to kind of say, okay, so why does this make sense, and what do I do with this? And I don't know if you've had the opportunity to speak to others that have gone through suicide, but suicide is different in different types of death that all of us will experience through loved ones and friends and partners and all those kind of things. You don't know where to put suicide. It's a really hard thing to grasp onto, and it's a hard thing to come to terms with. But that really helped me come to terms with all of the things that had happened in my life. And it started me seeing things differently. And I think that helped me through one of the most darkest periods of my life. And I just think it really fits my life perfectly.
Well, it's inexplainable, and I admire how open you are about your faith. I think that's actually really unique, especially for somebody in the position that you are in. Some people don't speak about that out loud. I admire that.
Do you know what? We're all, and I say to people, I mean, everybody finds their journey to their own faith, and I believe that faith is very personable. And I'm very cautious in regards to, I don't try and convince somebody that they have to find their faith. I think there's different times in your life that what happens is the realization of something else is going on in your life, and I think that that's the time that you lean. And I think that in my circumstance, what I've tried to do as a public servant, and especially as a mayor, is I've tried to be very open about who I am. Because the reality being is, I can go back to when I was elected in 2018. If I'm going on too long, you just tell me.
No, go ahead.
But in 2018, there was headlines all across the country that said, homeless man becomes mayor. And it made a great headline, but I had to say to everybody, you understand I wasn't homeless at the time, right? Like, they didn't just come to me
There's
and say,
a lot in there.
You got anything going today?
Yeah.
I went, no, not really, because I'm homeless. I got nothing. You want to run for mayor? Sure, well, let's give it a go.
Sure,
right?
why not?
But it made a great headline, and I still remember I was doing all these interviews, and there was a television interview that I did with Dwight Drummond, and Dwight Drummond is a young guy that started at City TV and CB24. He was a videographer, worked his tail off from Jane and Finch area. And we're walking up the street on Simcoe Street, and he said, isn't it amazing a guy that has got such a challenging background could become a mayor of a major city? And I said, isn't it amazing a kid from Jane and Finch can be the news anchor at CBC News? And we kind of laughed about it, but it really put things into perspective. And I think that, that to me is one of those kind of things of again, is just, we realize that all of us are going to have different challenges and things that happen in our life, but that's what makes us unique. That's what gives us the giftings. But I think what it also does remind us that if you look at those kind of things, you can see that you have an opportunity to take those giftings and utilize them in a real positive way. And I think Dwight does a great job about demonstrating. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter the challenges you have. If that's something that's deeply inside of you, you could create some great things.
I couldn't agree more. And you said something unique about our own personal experiences. There are different moments in our lives that we look at things differently. I want to get into that a little bit. I want to kind of unpack your story while leaving time at the end for the other points of discussion. But when we talk about even your childhood, can you just, for the audience, describe the relationship you had with your parents at an early age?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a uniqueness because I lost my mom when I was only months old, and I was the last of 7 children being born into this family. And myself and my older brother at the time was about 2 years old. In the early part of 1960, fathers didn't bring up small children. They just didn't. They weren't equipped for it. And so myself and my older brother, we were put into the Children's Aid Society. And, I was a little baby, so he was put into different foster homes. I was put into different foster homes. And it just happened that I ended up at the Carter household a few times through the foster parent program. And it just happened that the Carter family, Isabel Carter and Charlie Carter, had fostered 22 small children from about 1947 to 1962. And they intervened because it was like I would be with the Carter family for a short period of time, then they'd take me to a family and try me out, and then back to the Carter family, and then to another family. And finally, Isabel Carter stepped in and said, "You're going to destroy this child because they're going to feel abandoned, they're not going to feel secure. Just leave them here and let us care for them." And I was fortunate enough to be adopted by the Carter family at that time. And so they had 3 of their own children at that time, Michael, Maureen, and David. And I grew up in that environment. I went off to school just like they went off to school.
Were you close with them?
I was close to, I mean, my relationship with my brothers and sisters, Maureen, Michael, and David, yes, over a period of time. My biological family, not so, because I just didn't know who they were or anything else. So I end up going off to school and in the 60s again, and really had an undiagnosed challenge in my life that at the time I had a learning disability called dyslexia, which is very common today but very rare in the 60s. And if you couldn't do the work, schools didn't know what to do with you. So I failed. I failed grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3 and grade 4. I always tell the story that by the time I got to grade 4, I went down to the principal's office to talk about a parking spot because apparently I was going to be in school a long time, So, and it just, you have to make humor of it. But it really did a lot of regards to my self-esteem, self-worth, and everything else. And, I really struggled through those years. And I was about seven years old, and I had a paper route. My dad thought it would be a really good idea for me to get a paper route. And where we lived, there was about 14 houses, and I delivered the papers to those places. And one day I went into this gas station where we lived, and my parents always said, "Don't go in there." And I never spoke about that day as a seven-year-old because I never spoke about it until I was about 31 years old. And I was raped by the gentleman that had the gas station there. And it was very, parents told you not to do it, and I disobeyed them and of course went in. And it was a piece of shame. So I always say that my life has been tested and blessed. So tested because of the reason that I lost my parents, but blessed because I was adopted by a family, tested, again, going to school and having a learning disability, and blessed that I had a family that accepted me the way I was. Tested again as being raped as a 7-year-old, and blessed because of the reason that some 30 years later I had an opportunity of really understanding what happened. And life continued to be that way. It continued to have a lot of darkness, a lot of issues, until July of 1974, when my older brother Michael, that was 28 at the time and a father of 3, he was a police officer, and he was killed in a motorcycle accident up at our cottage. And that really devastated me because I just didn't understand it. My friends didn't understand it. And my parents, I could see my parents just be destroyed from it. So,
up until that point, did you, would you say you lived a average young childhood life?
I mean, I was very fortunate. I grew up in Agincourt, Ontario. And my dad was the only one that worked. He worked for the federal government. My mom was a stay-at-home. And, I was a horrible hockey player, and so that's why I became a runner. Not a very good athlete, but
self-awareness is the first step to growth.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, but it was just, it was a normal upbringing.
So what was that point? Because, what was the day you got sober again?
So I started drinking in 1974,
74.
of July of 1974, when my brother died.
This was after your brother had passed.
My brother had died in the early part of July of 1974. At the wake, I started drinking. And what I didn't realize long term, but at the moment, what happened was all of those things that had happened to me and the things that I was suppressing, alcohol really helped me suppress them. And I became everything I always dreamed about. You know, I was funny and charismatic and good looking and charming and all those kind of things, which I wasn't. But alcohol has a wonderful way of masking things. And of course, because of my addictive personality, once I started when I was 13, that journey went all the way till I was 31. And addiction did everything. By the end of it, I was mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually broken in every aspect. And, you know, living homeless and begging for money on the streets and, you know, being a liar, a thief, and a cheat, and all those kind of things that you do become when you get into that darkness of addiction. And then my addiction went from alcohol to drugs, and then more drugs and more alcohol and more
just
drugs.
kept getting worse.
And it just gets worse.
What was those years? Because I was curious, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I am curious to know about the years. Get me in the head of somebody who is on the street begging for money, who is addicted to something. What's going on in their head?
The only thing that mattered at that particular time was to be able to get enough money so that I could get my fix. That's all that mattered. So my whole, it's like watching, chipmunks, right? All they do all day is they just forage. They try and get as many things. They eat, they grab stuff, they store it, they do everything else. An addict, all we're trying to do is we're trying to get as much money as we can to be able to support our habit for that 24 hours.
Right.
And it doesn't matter about it. There's nothing that really seems to cross the line. It just the main focus is just to get your fix.
So when people came to you, because I can imagine that lasted for a few years, right?
Yeah.
When there must have been people that came in, tried to reach out, helped out. I mean, I know your sister was a big help in you getting sober, but even before that, before those moments and that happened, what would you say or feel, or why wouldn't you accept the help earlier?
Because of the reason that I was engulfed in my own pain and my own darkness, that this is the life that I've been given, and what happens is all of these events start stacking on top of each other, and you start believing of being victimized of these things. And it's not, I'm speaking about my own journey. There's many individuals that will watch this biography and will kind of say, I too have gone through many difficult times, and I didn't interpret it that way. I interpreted that the darkness, that the things that were happening to me were really, really unfair. And, so therefore I'm doing what I have to do to be able to survive and deal with my things. You haven't lived my life, so how dare you say anything? And a lot of people tried to reach me. It wasn't until you get to that final place where this moment of realization that there really is no other options now. You're either really going to understand that you're going to die or you're going to live. And that really comes down to the two things that really come to light. And that's what happened to me. But it was just alcohol and drugs gave me the opportunity to cope with all the crap that I had gone through. And as a falsehood that it was going to fix things was not correct. It was a coping mechanism, and that's all I used it for.
At what point did you realize it was a coping mechanism? Because I can imagine while you were in the moment, you probably thought to yourself, there must have been something that was like, oh, am I using this to cope?
I think it was more so of I'm using it to mask. So that's all it is. Just mask, push the pain away, just live it away. I don't have to deal with it. Don't have to deal with the emotions. I don't have to ask people to hear me. I don't have to ask people to understand it. And sometimes when you grow up in a certain era, people just say, buck it up and just suck it up, kind of thing, right? I'm an emotional person, and the reality being is that that's not realistic for me. I can't do that.
Your sister's suicide.
Yeah.
that happened while you were struggling with addiction?
No, I was clean almost 9 years when Maureen died.
Wow.
And so, and I, it was, a lot of people said, you, there weird things are said sometimes. But somebody said, you don't have an urge to drink or anything else. And I said to somebody, I said, I would never dishonor my sister of saving my life by doing something like that. I still remember the day that she did everything she possibly could to be able to make sure I understood that this was the moment that life had to change. And
What was that day?
that was the day I showed up on her doorstep and just said to her, I said, Marina, I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm really, really sick. And she said to me, she said, you got a choice today. You can either sober up or you can die. But one of them is going to happen today. And she was so angry with me too, because she saw things in me that I never saw. And I still don't see a lot of the things that maybe she saw. But I knew she was dead serious. And I was at such a broken place that there was nowhere else to turn. And it was either accept this moment or die within a couple of days. And I think that scared me a lot. And I truly believed in my heart of hearts that I wasn't that person, but I didn't want to be that person. Do you know what I mean? Addiction does really horrible things, and that it makes people do horrible things.
Why was that the day that you switched?
I don't know.
Of so many years,
I don't know.
that was the day.
I don't know. I always say that I looked in the mirror that morning, and I had, for the first time, had seen how sick I was. My face had all caved in, and I was, weighed like a pack of smokes by that time, and I just looked horrible. And it was the very first time I kind of looked at it, and it was the first time that I really felt. I felt physically ill, but I felt like when I saw myself, I think I realized how sick I was and how bad I was, and I really don't know what that moment was. What was the trigger? I think the trigger was me seeing myself for the first time about what I had become, and what I had become is not who I wanted to be.
When we look at this story today, and I can imagine you probably look at the homeless situation here in a way different way than what the average person might, because of your story. You understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you feel you understand the solutions that are required for homelessness?
So there's two things. One is there's a huge expectation on me because of my background that I should be able to fix this.
Right. I can imagine that's what a lot of people think.
And then on the other side, there's a huge expectation of understanding what my roles and responsibilities are. So my roles and responsibilities as the mayor of this great city is to uphold the bylaws and the laws of the land. So that's one. On the other side of it is people have this, I think, unrealistic expectation to say, well, you were an addict, so you should understand it, you should be sympathetic and all those kind of things, which I am. But I also have a job to do. And so there's two things that really frustrate me. One is right from day one, and I can go back to, I was elected mayor in 2018, and really the crisis of the homelessness in 2018 in our city till about April of 2020 was about 45 individuals. It's 600 now.
Yeah.
600.
Was it really only 45?
It was only really 45 individuals. And so, and those were individuals that were, individuals that had struggled with mental illness and addiction and alcoholism and all that kind of stuff. But in March of 2020, of course, that's when the world shut down. And then April of 2020, everything shut down. And so our city saw a population that we had never seen before. And it kept on growing and growing and growing. And of course, we're here some 5 years later. And it continues. We have a better idea what we're dealing with, but I don't think any of us understood about the Western wave that was coming.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that the amount of sickness that was out there. I didn't realize the severity of mental illness. So I think naivety was a big part. I always say, leadership has four components, right? You got to have an ego to be able to say you do the job. You got to be humble enough to be able to understand that you don't have all the answers, and you invite other people in it. You have to have passion for what you do, and you have to be ignorant. And when I say ignorance, you just have to understand that you're not going to understand everything, and you're never going to understand how difficult things are. And so I'm a great believer of that. And I think there was news stories in 2018 that, Maclean's magazine, I think, did a article on me and said, this man saved his life. Can he save his city's life? And so, there was unrealistic expectations on me in regards to fixing it. Now, part of that was my problem, because I truly believe when I was running for mayor that I had the depth, the understanding about addiction and mental health, that I could bring solutions to the table. That
Well,
I
you
could
can
be
look
a
at
big
it
part.
from an empathetic
Yeah,
perspective.
and I truly believe that I was equipped enough so I could be able to deal with it. What I didn't understand about it was the different toxicity of drugs, what the different toxicity of drugs was doing. Didn't understand the severity of mental health. We're talking about severe schizophrenia that's on our streets. And then you see this combination happen. And I had absolutely no concept in regards to what I was going to face. I mean, who could have ever thought that they were going to add a tranquilizer drug to an opiate with fentanyl at the same time that has every indication that it can kill you every single time? Who would have ever thought that drug dealers would do that? But they did do it, and how that changed the brain chemistry of people. That being said, is what I've tried to do is take my experiences and say, what is it that I'm committed to? What has my life taught me? And how am I going to act as a mayor? So one is, my frustration is, at a lower tier, we don't have full control of health, social service, housing, or policing, because we're a lower tier, so we don't have that. So it's about then advocating, educating, and moving up. So one of the first steps I did is I met with the faith community to talk about the drug crisis that we were doing, so that they had a better understanding. Instead of them saying, all we have to do is pray about it, I said, no, you don't understand. You can pray about it, but you got to understand the severity of the illnesses that are going on. So I tried to do that.
Yeah.
Second of all is try to support the agencies that were providing the services, and what role do we play in regards to it? We'd try and figure out ideas. They said, well, nobody's got a bathroom, so we put porta potties out on the street, and we thought, well, that'll help. Well, the addicts lit them on fire, and so that didn't work, right? It was like we didn't understand what was going on about the drug toxicity and how it was changing people, but we kept on trying to do different things. So we're at a place now where I'm saying to everybody that'll listen is, I want to take people from their worst day to their best day. And what that looks like is, the moment we get a call in regards to somebody VSA due to drug toxicity, how do we make that from their worst day to their best day? And how do we build a system that is going to be able to actually be able to address the issue?
It's like a system built on actually leaving an impact.
It has to, and it has to be a continuum of care. So right at this particular time, we have somebody VSA, we take them to the hospital, we don't have a hospital bed, we release them, right? So, and then say, come back Tuesday, because we might have somebody you can talk to. As an addict, I'm not coming back Tuesday. I am not coming back Tuesday. The day that I'm in there and I'm on death's bed is the day you have an opportunity
To help
to put me in hospital, get me into a program, get me into withdrawal management, and start the journey of recovery that happens. That's the moment, right? So what I've been advocating for is, how are we going to take people from their worst day to their best day? So one of the ways is, we get a call of a VSA. We get them to the hospital. We get them into an emergency ward that is a mental health and addiction ward only, not the general emergency ward, right? Mm-hmm. That's step one. Two, here we just signed a MOU with CAMH. Have the right people 24 hours a day ready to intervene that have the expertise in regards to those individuals. That's step two. Step three, get people into long-term recovery and withdrawal management programs. We cannot, everybody thinks we can fix addiction in 21 or 28 days. The reality being is, it's not just the addiction, it's the 30 years of brokenness
It's
that
the
we bring.
lifestyle, it's everything.
Right, but it's all of the brokenness. In some circumstances, you got sexual abuse and physical abuse and verbal abuse, and you got homelessness, and you got death that these people are dealing with. You got disappointment. We think that if we take away drugs and alcohol, the coping mechanism that they have, and not address the life issues that they have, it's going to fix them. And there's a period of time. Do you know, when I was in the hospital in recovery, I didn't talk about being raped until I was in a safe environment where I was so ashamed of myself as an adult to talk about that moment. But it took months for me to be in that environment so that I could actually have those conversations. It was months before I could say to people, I can't read. I don't know how to read. That's a shame as an adult. How do I deal with that? How do you have a safe place to talk about the events that have happened in your life? So we look at it as two separate issues. You know, people feel if we just take the drugs away, we fix them. No, you have to deal with the brokenness. So long-term inpatient programs, 17 to 24 months, so that people not only are able to deal with the issues, but we equip people differently. We make better decisions. We have the life skills to move forward. And then work with our housing developers to make sure that we have a transitional housing so people can get into it.
I want to ask you about that because I appreciate you all giving all this detail because it's very clear you're passionate about it. When I speak to some municipalities, housing just seems to be the answer for homelessness. But I felt like there was something missing because just giving, like I'm thinking about you, maybe 6 years into your addiction, okay? Yeah. If somebody had tried to put you in housing, but with no active support built around that, no safety net, no support from a mental health perspective and being able to learn how to cope with these things differently, you would have been 2 days later back on the street.
You're not equipped. And the reality being is I'm still not dealing with the issues that are driving me towards my habit of utilizing drugs and alcohol because I haven't dealt with the issues at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's unrealistic. We've had an example where, you know, everybody says housing first. So we've put people in housing that don't have life skills. And the next thing you know, they're barbecuing inside of an apartment. It's not a good thing. But we presume they know better. Right? You don't bring a barbecue inside an apartment and use it. We presume people know that. Well, we've got to figure out, first and foremost, the severity of their comprehension and make sure they're prepared for that environment. So we have a responsibility. If we're going to take somebody from their worst day to their best day, let's make sure that we do everything we possibly can to be able to say, you know, this is what drives me nuts. So there's two things. One is in any other circumstances, if we had a heart disease and we were dealing with cancer, we're dealing with Parkinson's, you go to the hospital, you get your care, and then they have a care plan.
Right.
Say, okay, so we're going to do all this. Somebody's going to come and see you Tuesday. They're going to give you your medication. They're going to do this. And there's a care package, right? And we walk that journey with them until they get into a place where they're ready. They're doing better. They're strong. They're everything else, right? Right at this particular time, we take somebody that's VSA. We take them to a hospital. The hospital says, we have no beds. So we let them go. And I kind of sit there and go, okay, so I want to give you a scenario. One is a guy that's VSA, that's a drug addict, that's now overdosed with toxicity, right? And B is somebody that just had a cardiac event on the street. So we take both of these patients up to a hospital, right? We say to the guy that just overdosed, right, after 8 to 13 hours of waiting in the emergency room, we have no beds. So you got to go. Come back Tuesday. We have the other guy that had a cardiac event, right? We have no beds. They don't go home. You know what they do?
What?
They get on the phone. They phone every hospital that's available and say, I got a cardiac patient here that needs care. Do you have a bed? You don't have a bed? You do have a bed? Good. And you know what we'll do? Not only will we put them in an ambulance to take them there, if it means that we have to put them on a helicopter, we'll take them there.
We'll take them.
So tell me the difference between the two. Both of them are deadly.
There's a lack of compassion, it seems, in dealing with the individual that has just dealt with an overdose or of some kind walking into the hospital.
I've tried to
it's like the buck stops.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know,
like you've done this to
like,
yourself, you know, and so as mayor, I'm curious because you can't. You yourself cannot solve this issue. This is a massive issue that you need to get a lot of people behind and see a greater vision in solving this. One of the things that I see municipalities do is work with NGOs on, you know, certain investments. So the municipality works with the NGO, supplies investment, then they rely on the NGO. Where I've seen some struggle is there's been too much of a reliance on the NGOs to do a good job, and then we have a situation. I spoke to somebody in, and I'll be frank, Hamilton, somebody who reported on this very closely, And I mean, the porta potties don't even have any filtration inside of the shelters that these individuals are staying in, and they're getting sick because there's crap in the toilet and it's not even being filtered properly. Like, so my question to you is, I am curious, in the solutions that you can actually do, because you can't even, I admire the tenacity, but it's not just you that can change the way a hospital works in this regard. You can push for it, advocate for it, which is what you mentioned. What steps can you take, actionable steps? Is it working with the NGOs and then holding them really accountable to the investments you give? What does that look like?
So there's two things. One is I believe that government has an important role and they have to have the leadership role on it. That's number one. So, I talk about the emergency ward, I talk about the housing component, I talk about the recovery program. My job is to make sure that the Premier and the Minister of Health understand that this is a pathway in regards to recovery and that this is what's necessary of the government today. Now, I always go to the Premier and say, this is the role I'm willing to do. I stood beside the Premier when it came down to saying it's non-acceptable that we allow people to live in inhumane conditions and just ignore it. So I stand about that. I also believe, and I can give you an example, that we are going through a process right now that we've been awarded a heart hub. My whole thing has been, who's the lead? Who are they going to be reporting to? Yeah. What are the policies and structures around it?
Actually have a process in place to hold them accountable.
Right. And I've talked to the Premier, I talked to the Minister of Health, I talked to the Finance Minister and said, I am not signing off until I make sure all of the components are in place.
Right.
And that's my role and responsibility. Make sure that the agencies that are providing these services, right, there's an accountability factor, and that we have to make sure that we have the agencies doing the proper work. Now, in my circumstance, my frustration sometimes is the region makes a decision on an agency that I have said to them, they're not appropriate. Right. And I've done it in the public forum where I've said, you're utilizing good-hearted people to be able to be part of the most complex, severe health crisis this country's ever faced. We're putting them in a position where we're saying to them, we know you're going to fail. Right. Because of the reason that you have to have the right people to be able to deal with the people that have this severe illness. So making sure that we hold them accountable.
Just to follow up on that too,
right.
Because one of the biggest issues I saw when I was doing some research on this within other municipalities was a simple lack of accountability from the government, the municipality that's providing the funding to the NGO. So to hear you say, yes, we're I mean, you can hold them as accountable as possible. And then if they're not doing a good job, then you pull it away.
But there's certain things that we've done. We've made sure that we've got a standard now in regards to food services. Make sure that they have to meet the same standards as a restaurant.
And I'm assuming you have people checking on that.
And we have our bylaw officers checking on that. We make sure our fire department is doing regular inspections. We make sure that our security teams are checking up on their security teams to make sure that the care and control of the areas. If it's not, we're reporting it to if in the circumstance of the region funding it, saying this is not according to our rules. We will utilize every bylaw and law that's on the book to hold people accountable. Right. These are the most vulnerable people. Yeah. The one thing that we have to do is make sure that we have an accountability factor so that we're not victimizing them again.
Can I ask you, and I didn't have this plan, but I am curious. You talked about church groups, and in a couple of articles that I've read, they actually say that church groups are a fantastic, call it NGO, if you can. I don't even know if you can do that, but church groups are great at being able to supply kind of the facility, as well as whether it's a food bank or something like that. Now, shelter, different story maybe, but I mean, we have one in Niagara, actually, a church that acts as a shelter, I think, with something like 10, 20, 30, 40 beds. Yeah. And it's fantastic. What have you seen from the best agencies? Are they churches? Are they private company?
The best people that I've seen that are doing the work is like the Canadian Mental Health Association. They have a housing component. They've got the mental health component. They know the addiction file. They have the structure in place. They have the governments in place. They have the policies in place. All of that. So they're really good at what they do. So I'm a big fan of theirs because of the strictness of it, right? Community health centers also can play a role in regards to what's going on. With the church groups, again, is what I keep on reiterating is this is the most severe health crisis this country has ever faced. We need to make sure that we have the right experts at the right places to be able to deliver the pieces. What I've encouraged the churches to do is to be able to find a way of being able to support the agencies that have the expertise and the professional bodies to be able to support them. And that to me is a better pathway forward, because then we've got the right people, the right skills and set, we've got the right environment to be able to provide the services. So I've encouraged the faith communities to play their role in regards to supporting the agencies that are certified accountable. You know, one of the great things about if it's provincially accountable, there's a whole bunch of regulations that they have to follow and reporting structure. That helps. So
because it's coming from the provincial government, so it's.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I have one more question for you on this
Yeah.
on this topic. What is your what would you say is your minimum base of improvement? What do you base improvement on? Is it more heads in beds each night, more people getting shelter? Is it more affordable housing? Is it just making their day better, having a system and process in place? Is it holding NGOs accountable to the investments you as a municipality or region make into them? What is it? If you could say the one thing that you would base improvement on this issue, when I look at our interview a year later, what would I look for?
And I don't think you can look at it as one.
Okay, fair.
One, I'll give you a priority list. One is me getting my emergency room up and running at Lake Ridge for mental health and addiction. Number one, getting people into the right care right away. That if a year from now I'm able to say it's open, it's running, and it's doing the things that we're getting people into a recovery base, I think that'll be a great success. Number two is you can depend upon data, but make sure the data is really reliable. And
Yeah, that's a
I'll
fair
tell
point.
you what's happening across the country. The drug toxicity has changed, so overdose calls have gone down. Death rates are coming down, but we're all trying to understand why. So if we just look at it and say, well, last year at this time we had hypothetically 300 overdoses, this year we have 125, that's a great success. I think is understanding what the data is really telling you. And I think we have to understand that better, because in some circumstances there is now a real fear that crystal meth is really coming back and coming back strong. And that's just a deadly, deadly drug that's out there, and then what they mix it with. My whole piece is, what I'm hoping for is the more people that we see go into recovery, and those that are in recovery will be a true testament that we're doing the right things. I'd like to see less people on the streets and that are actually getting the help they wanted. But to be absolutely honest, more people we can get into what I'm committed to, which is a recovery-based solution, because that's what families want me to do. Families want me to find a way of being able to get their loved one back to them, to the ones that they used to be. And so if I can find a way of getting them to that place, I think that would be a great indicator.
I like your thought process because even when I look back at your story, in some capacity, you were only the most open to help at your lowest point.
Yes.
And so you trying to tackle that for other people by just saying, at their lowest point, it's a non-negotiable, and typically their lowest point would be, I'm assuming, when they had a near-death experience because of an overdose. Okay, what are we doing to help them at that specific point?
And one of the things that I've advocated for, and I stood beside the Premier in a press conference, and I said I believe in compassionate intervention, and I'm a great believer. And some experts say, well, compassionate intervention doesn't work, and I said, well, it worked for me. So I'm going to speak from somebody that compassionately said that this is not the person I know. The other thing is, so we're just supposed to stand by and wait?
Yeah.
You know, I had a lady, I'll tell you a very fast story. I had a lady that called me, this is going back almost a year, called me and said, you know, Mayor Carter, I understand that you'll meet with families that have loved ones that are sick and that are dealing with addiction. I said, absolutely. She said, I'm at Lake Ridge Health right now, and my 24-year-old son is on life support. So 3 weeks later, she calls me and says, okay, you know, unfortunately, my son died, and I'm wondering if you'll meet with me. I said, absolutely. So her question was really, really important to me. So she came in this office, we sat down, and she said, my son has been dealing with his addiction since he was about 16 years old. And she said, I know you're scared of your bylaw. I know police departments. I know the EMS people. I tried so hard to help my son. And I'm grateful for that. And she said, and every time you guys took him up to the hospital, he made his medical decisions. And she said, then 3 weeks ago, he's on life support and they call me. And she said, and they charged me with the duty of making the decision to take him off of life support. And she said, his mother, the one that born this child, you couldn't have called me between 16 and 24, but you called me on the day that he's on life support so that I can carry that for the rest of my life. And she said, Mayor Carter, do you think that's fair? And I said, absolutely not. She said, the system needs to change. I want my son to live. If somebody could have intervened because he can't make the right decisions, the level of toxicity that the drugs are doing to the human brain are making people, unfortunately, not making the right decisions. And I believe in my heart of hearts, somewhere along the line, somebody's got to make the right decisions for them.
Like your sister did.
Absolutely. And will it work in every case? Probably not. But it's better than just letting people squalor and wander the world until they're so broken that maybe we don't even have a chance to be able to get them to a place of recovery.
I'd argue it's that right there, if that mother could have stepped in those decisions, it would have been better than any sort of government support, anything could have ever provided.
Would have been wonderful. And none of this, while you can go through the court system so you can get a 72-hour hold, like that, it's burdensome stuff.
Yeah.
It's at some point after the 13th visit of the same person, should we be asking the questions of somebody else to be able to say, they're not capable of making good medical decisions. We need somebody to make a medical decision. Now, we have a responsibility on government to be able to kind of say, okay, so how are we going to get the beds? And I'll tell you what I've told some of the agencies. Is that all of the private beds that are in the province of Ontario, because we're in a state of emergency, what we should do is all those agencies should come together and say, we've got 400 beds that are private beds that we'll make publicly available because we're in a moment of emergency. Go to the province, instead of us charging $17,000 or $20,000 a month for those beds, we're going to do it for $10,000, but we're going to make those beds available. We're in a state of emergency. Why not?
We need to help.
Right, and we can't build 3,000 recovery beds in 15 minutes. So let's utilize what we've got. That's the kind of innovative thinking we need. This is a moment of crisis. We're in an emergency crisis. We have 24 people across this country die every day. Like, at what point, and we're over 50,000 since 2017 or 16 now, at what point does somebody say, this is really not acceptable?
Yeah.
Right? At what point? So I think we're past that point. So let's get on with it, folks.
One of the things I want to spend the next 3 to 5 minutes about is job security, because job security is one of the things that there are a fair bit of people who lose their job. It then sends them into a spiral, and they struggle with the idea of homelessness. In that regard, when we talk about jobs, Oshawa is known for their cars.
Was.
Yeah.
So
I know things changed.
1985, up to about 1990, our economy, 86% of it was manufacturing. As you and I sit here today, it's 3% of our total economy. The diversity of our economy has changed dramatically. We are still known as one of the highest quality production and diverse lines in North America. We do incredible building of automobiles in our city, and we've got incredible people that are talented in regards to building automobiles. But what we've tried to do in our community is understand that we need to be very diverse in our economy, so that when challenges like what we're facing right now, that is not of our doing, by the way, that we have a place to be able to make sure that people have a way of being able to provide for their family. So that's why we've been very methodical in regards to being able to say, how do we make sure that the economy is diverse enough so that if people are doing this job and that industry closes, it doesn't mean that it's the end of their
Well, I know
life.
even in the States, when the China shock happened, early 2000s, you saw they called it China shock, where there were these cities built around like two car manufacturing facilities, and the whole city went under because these two things shut down. Like it was massive. And so I admire, you can't rely so heavily on that. And clearly, there's a fire under everybody's butt to make changes right now because it's being forced. This is a big challenge. Approximately 50,000 Silverados assembled in Canada, specifically at the GM Oshawa plant, moved to the U.S.
So we're still producing. We've still got 2 shifts. We still have 2,500 people that are producing the vehicles. I can't go into details, but what I can tell you is on a regular basis, almost on a daily basis, my conversation both with the government, General Motors, it continues to be able to kind of be what else do we need to do?
So you're really trying to mediate a lot of that.
We are absolutely looking at what other opportunities are here. I'm too stupid and too stubborn to give up. So, and the people that work at General Motors don't want me to give up. So what I'm trying to do is, what other ideas can we bring? So I had the Premier, Minister Fedeli was here, Minister Bethel, Minister McCarthy. We're all here for a visit along with the Premier, and we talked about what are the other options. And we not only met with the GM executives, but we also worked with Unifor to sit down. And so we're advocating in regards to if Canada is going to spend this kind of money in regards to defense, what type of opportunities. And this facility here in Oshawa played a significant role in the Second World War. So we know that we have the capacity. We have 10 million square feet of industrial space. We have an unbelievable workforce and talented workforce. We're looking at what other products can we bring in there to be part of the Canadian economy and to be able to use the skills, the abilities, and the technology there to be able to be part of that. And I think we're going to find a pathway forward. I was on the phone with David Patterson from the United States, not yesterday, the day before, and he is our trade envoy in Washington. One of the interesting is David was the vice president of General Motors when I was told in 2018, 3 days before I took the oath of office, that they were closing. And so we have a very good relationship, and him and I work really close together to get General Motors back 2 years later, along with Jerry Dias and Unifor. And so we're working.
It's a very creative, innovative way of thinking, and you kind of have to get that way because there's only so much you can do when you are in the position you're in, and at the end of the day, the company's going to make the decision on whether they want to stay or move. But being able to be creative, offer new solutions, I mean, you have to be able to do that.
And Canadians buy 2 million vehicles a year. Alberta alone, I think they buy 400,000 vehicles alone. I mean, you look at the market itself, our Silverado and our Canyon that they do. So we do a full-size and mid-size truck. By the way, our line is the only line in North America that can run 2 different chassis down the same line. You can't do that anywhere else. So there's a uniqueness to it. And I think that the reality being is we have to look at every opportunity. I always go back to when Coca-Cola is the best known drink in the world, right? So Coca-Cola could have just sat there and said, you know what, we're going to keep on selling bottles of Coke, and that's it, right? But they understood that they needed to continue to find innovative ways of being able to introduce their product to people. So they understood there was a backlash. The schools were saying, you're selling Coca-Cola to my kids in school, and you've got your vending machines. So what did they do? They created a juice line. They created a water line. They took out the pop dispensers in schools and put in juice containers. They diversified their business to be able to meet the changing environment. It was evolutionary. And so that's what I'm saying to General Motors, and General Motors is also doing the same thing. They're looking at it and saying, okay, so what do we need to do, especially within our bubble of Canada? How are we going to be able to do the things that are necessary to be still one of the top world automobile makers, designers, and transportation people, and technology people? And where is the need right now? If we have obstacles in the United States because of the restrictions that are on there, all the businesses have said the same thing to me. We believe we can compete in Canada. There's certain things I need from you as a government, but we also understand that we have to be innovative in the way that we think. That there's certain things we'll do and there's certain things you need to do. And I think that that's where the opportunity right now is.
Where does the willpower for GM to come and say, we want to stay here? Because, I mean, they've shifted, what, 1/3 of their manufacturing of the cars that they had here to the United States. Why would they have the willpower to want to stay here?
I think there's a couple things.
There's still a good market here.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
people
still
are
a
still buying
good.
cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Canadian. As a matter of fact, this month the report just came out. GM had one of their best months in Canada that they've ever had, which is incredible to be able to think about where we are right now and how they did. They understand the market's there, and they understand there's a uniqueness to the market, and I think they still want to be. They want to be a leader in that market. I think that's number one. I also think that they understand about the diversity of the economy, and I think they understand that they've got to do things differently, and they have to understand that they've got to widen their berth in regards to the things that they do to make sure that the survivability of their country. What I can tell you is I've met with a lot of U.S.-based companies here, especially in the last couple of months. One is they're waiting to see how they'll be accepted, and I'm an arms open guy.
Yeah.
I keep on saying to people, our arms are open. We're not elbows up, we're arms open, right? Because I want you to be here. And all of the companies have said the same thing to me, and I've reiterated it. This is a moment in time. Next November of 26, the midterms are going to happen. That'll change dramatically. Midterms also signifies for somebody that can't run again, almost a lame duck period. So there's not the same threat. So people can be courageous enough to stand in difficult positions. I also believe that the Canadian economy will continue to be optimistic, hopeful, and be prosperous. I think we're going to go through some rough times.
Yeah.
But I just have this deep feeling that we're going to be fine. And I think you're seeing that in the national surveys that are coming out. I just honestly believe that GM understands where the future is and where it's going to be, but how important the Canadian market is, and I think that they see the opportunity.
I think I have a lot of admiration for Canada's leadership right now when it comes to being an infrastructure powerhouse, trying to make it that, because it allows municipalities like yourself to really leverage that in conversations with companies. Right? Mayor, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story, solutions on homelessness, as well as job security here in Oshawa. And if you have any questions for the mayor, then please comment down below and we'll see if we can get them answered for you. Have a wonderful day and enjoy.